the start sit I sent in, I forgot about the McKissick this morning.
No, I figured I was just teasing.
Oh man, was that in the mock draft with Mackins from
Yeah.
Undroppables? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh man, good times. Who would have known you were secretly a genius back then?
I don't even think I was necessarily a genius. I just thought it was a funny pick because it was like, I remember you're like, McKissick, I don't know about that. And I was like, yeah. And then I was like, well, and stranger things have happened. And then when he started popping off, and then I randomly tuned into one show where you were like talking about it. Yeah, I like McKissick. And I was like, this guy was dogging me for a McKissick pick. And I look at how the tables have turned.
I know. He's someone that running back 24 this week. You know, he's going off, dude.
Alex Smith likes him.
That's crazy.
I mean, yeah.
I know. Yeah, Alex Smith has been a surprise as well. I did not expect him to be playing as well as he is now.
Yeah, no, he really has.
All right, I'll go ahead and get into the intro, make sure I have everything up that I need. I think I do. All right, sweet. So, all right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 43 of the Snake of the Draft podcast. I'm your host, Jacob Vines. You can find me on Twitter at jsnake_DFF. In this episode, I have Adam Hutchison coming back on for the third or fourth time now. It's bad. I'm losing track, but he's the medical specialist for the Undroppables and a writer for the FF Champs. Today, we're going to be talking about Week 12 Dynasty ads, as well as some early off-season trade targets or potentially trade away targets. So welcome, Adam. How are you?
Hey, man. Hey, thanks for having me back on. Yeah, I've lost track now. Is it 3 or 4? I mean, I've been on the show a couple of times. It's always a good time when you have me hop on.
Yeah, I think this one's number 3. I think it's 3.
That's right. I think it's right.
So you're at almost 6% ish of the Snake of the Draft pod, if not a little more.
So if I get to 5, do I get like a special plaque? Do I get my name on the podcast? Like, what do I get here? I need it's like a punch card. I need to get something.
Let's do it to where you can, hey, here we go. You can get your name just in the corner of the Snake in the Draft logo on the Twitter account.
All right. I'll hold you to that.
All right, it may take me a bit to figure out how to do that, but I will work on it because we're going to be going up there soon, especially with going in the off season. And I know some people have some players that they're a little nervous about related to injuries, and then even just off season, just a fun time to just talk. And also, we are not stuck on a time frame of got to record Sunday, Monday to get it out on Tuesday, because I personally love having podcasts come out on Tuesdays, so then I get my Dynasty ads or my redraft ads right then and there instead of waiting.
No doubt. Yeah, no, I love your podcast, and like I said, always fun to listen to, always fun to hop on. So anytime you slide in my DMs, I'm always going to make myself available.
Appreciate it. So let's go ahead and start with the man that took over Twitter and ESPN leagues. We have Taysom Hill, who played really good this week from a fantasy football standpoint. He is the quarterback 3 as of before the Sunday and Monday night game, with 24.4 point per passing touchdown points, because he had those 2 rushing touchdowns, which is going to help any quarterback in general. How are you feeling about Taysom Hill going into the rest of the season, as well as the 2021, and especially focus more on a dynasty perspective?
Yeah, sure. So I think you touched on a couple of things here. So for the rest of the season, I think it really is tied into what we think about Drew Brees, right? Came out last night that Drew Brees actually had 11 rib fractures, which for some people that aren't as familiar with anatomy and physiology as much as you and I are, that's pretty astounding. That's a lot of rib fractures. You only for simple math out there, you only have 24 ribs. So that's almost half of them that he fractured and suffered a punctured lung. When that injury originally happened, people were talking about his timeline being somewhere in 2 to 3 weeks. I was super skeptical about that. Okay, it takes about 6 weeks for a fracture to heal, depending on where it is in the severity of it. Multiple rib fractures, that's going to add on there. I speculated when it happened it was going to be a 5 to 6 weeks injury, depending on how the Saints did, they might hold him out a couple weeks, try to bring him back week 16, week 17, to kind of get him warmed up for the playoffs. Right now, it's being reported that he'll be back week 15. I still think that's a little bit optimistic. So I think if he's out at least until week 15, likely week 16, Taysom Hill, you can get a couple good weeks out of him. So depending on what you're doing in a super flex league or, a deep dynasty league, I think he's definitely playable. Long term, I'm about wishy-washy. I'm 50-50. Sean Payton seems to like him for sure. So you can take that for what it is. I did this just for you, Jacob. I made a trade today in Dynasty.
All right.
Where I had Taysom Hill. Okay, so you can tell me if you think this was a good trade. I'm a fringy team. I've had some bad injuries. I've had Christian McCaffrey, had Joe Mixon, Cortland Sutton. Those are guys that I've lost for the year. So I kind of pulled my hat out of the playoff race and was going a little bit more rebuild. Taysom Hill, 1 QB league, 10 teams. I have Deshaun Watson, Sam Darnold, and Taysom Hill, and I just flipped Taysom Hill for Bryan Edwards.
1 QB, that's a slam dunk. Even in Superflex, I can get behind that trade. So, yeah, I love it.
So, I mean, that should kind of tell you what I was thinking the same thing. I'm rebuilding. Bryan Edwards, obviously he's been disappointing. He hasn't played this year. He came into the combine injured. He's been dealing with some lower body injuries. It's going to be probably a wash for Bryan Edwards in 2020. Although we're recording this tonight, he could have a big game tonight. We're recording it before the Chiefs play. But Taysom Hill is kind of one of those guys where it's interesting, it's appealing, but he's not a slam dunk prospect to me. So for in Dynasty, I'm selling if I can get some value. And Bryan Edwards is somebody that, those skill position players are a little bit harder to come by than a quarterback, that I'd be okay giving them up if you could get something reasonable of value.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I posted a couple times over this year about, is Taysom Hill going to be the guy in 2021? And just by looking at the contract situation of the Saints, it's looking really gross that he could be in 2021. But that's also assuming, Drew Brees retires and that the Saints don't find a better option, which there's potential, they could maybe draft someone or do all sorts of different other things. So I've sort of decided in Superflex leagues, which I only have him in one league that I don't think anybody's going to trade for him. But if I could get like a mid to early 2021 second or a player of similar value, I'd comfortably move him for that. But I think if you're like a contender right now, especially in Superflex, he's a pretty decent hold, especially with he's just completely taken away Alvin Kamara's upside and is just running the ball in instead. So those rushing touchdowns are so helpful for the quarterback.
For sure. And I think that's, a good point and a good caveat of, if he's in a super flex league, what you were talking about, I offered Taysom Hill up for a 3rd round pick because I was trying to acquire some picks for 2021 because I like that class. And the person came back to me with Bryan Edwards. I'm assuming because they're probably frustrated with Bryan Edwards at this point. You're seeing a lot of rookies break out. Even a late bloomer, Michael Pittman Jr., had a decent game for the Colts today. This 2020 class and this 2021 class, I'm not a film grinder. I'm not, but I respect some people that really look at that stuff in Devy, and they're telling me that the 2021 class is just going to be as good as this 2020 class. So getting guys in either one of those is something that I'm trying to do. So, 3rd round pick, if someone came to me for Taysom Hill, I'd strongly consider it based on what I was doing. But if you're trying to win right now, I think he's somebody that could get you a decent 4 to 5 weeks.
Yeah, I agree. So now we're going to switch to more of like a somber note, which I think this is going to be a pretty quick answer from you, Adam. But, Joe Burrow, he's out with an ACL tear. Any concerns going into 2021?
No. I think there is potentially a concern that maybe he might not be ready for the start of the season. The offseason will be really telling for that. I think it's a little bit different for the quarterback position as opposed to somebody like a running back or a wide receiver that would tour it around this time last year. We saw Rashad Penny still struggling to kind of come back from that ACL injury. It's a different positional requirements. So even though it's a little bit later in the season with Joe Burrow tearing his ACL, I think it's reasonable that if they accelerate his timeline a little bit, he could be back for the start of the season, if not very close to. So I'm not worried. I think, if you can get him for a discount at this point, this would be the time to strike in Dynasty.
Yeah, I agree. If we're doing just the typical 9-month time frame, let's say he has surgery beginning of December, that would put it at September, which is that good math? No, that put it at August. But that's decent amount of time, but it's obviously not as linear. And you've talked about that actually on your first time going on the podcast about how recovery is not linear like everybody wants it to be.
Yeah. And again, with a quarterback, I would be less concerned because I think he's going to be putting less physically, demands, less cutting, pivoting like a running back or a wide receiver. So I'd be less concerned for Burrow.
Cool. And so next, this actually I asked on you were on the is it FF Intervention, right? That you do
Yep.
Sunday mornings? Okay. Yep. So I hopped on and listened to y'all start sits, and with the report that came out, Nyheim Hines is going to get the majority of the carries. I was like, I think I'd start Hines over McKissick, and my other option was Mike Williams. And then I was like, you know what? I'm going to see what y'all are saying over there, and y'all agreed. And then lo and behold, like we should all expect with the Colts this year, Jonathan Taylor goes out for 22 attempts, even gets more receptions than Nyheim Hines with 4 receptions versus Hines having 3. And then if we do the carry total, we had Jonathan Taylor with it was 16 more carries than Nyheim Hines, and then Jordan Wilkins had just 4 carries on the day. So my question to you is, are you just done with the Colts backfield and you just see it more as a landmine, or is this JT usage that you're seeing right now giving you a little bit of hope and it's going to make you, think about starting him next week to most likely just be disappointed again? But are you thinking about starting JT next week?
Yeah. So I've gone back and forth, but in some leagues where I have Jonathan Taylor in Dynasty, I invested a lot of draft capital in him. So he's been an instant plug in my lineup every single week, just based out of necessity because I haven't been able to pivot to anybody. So I actually don't have any Jonathan Taylor in redraft. If we're talking redraft where do you have a little bit more flexibility, I probably would have moved off from Jonathan Taylor by now. But in Dynasty leagues where I have Jonathan Taylor, I'm still playing him. And I think you can still go there. For people that didn't watch the game, super frustrating for Jonathan Taylor. He had a 20-yard touchdown called back because of holding, and I'm not exaggerating. I didn't count it exactly. I think he had 4 or 5 runs in a row that got called back for holding penalties. He could have easily had a bigger game. They were using him a ton. Again, I touched on this. I'm not a big film grinder or study a lot of film. I kind of defer to the experts on that. But from watching a lot of Colts games, my wife's a big Colts fan. He looked more comfortable to me. He was reading things a little bit. He had a little wiggle to his game. He wasn't being indecisive by any means. He was hitting the hole or he was cutting. He was running through people. I think he started to look. I got a little bit of a glimpse of the Jonathan Taylor that we were used to at Wisconsin. So I'm hoping the Colts staff did as well. They were going to him. Like you said, he had 22 carries. Those are only the ones that were recorded that weren't calling back for holdings. I think he probably had closer to 25 to 30 carries, honestly. He could have had a much bigger day. It was really frustrating watching that, but I'm optimistic for the first time.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I have Jonathan Taylor in one keeper league, and then I have him in one dynasty league. And I've been sitting him in the dynasty league because I have had Giovanni Bernard, Kareem Hunt. I've been able to start them over him. But yeah, I'm starting to get a little excited, which obviously when we get excited about these players, they usually for fantasy football's sake, they end up disappointing. But, it was a good matchup with Green Bay. Also, with him getting all these carries, they did end up winning in overtime 34-31, which I don't think enough people think about the winning, especially related to quarterbacks. Like whenever Carson Wentz had his really bad game, I think it was right before the bye, they still won, which obviously they're going to look at it. But at the same time, with guys getting paid so much, like Wentz, he has 50-something million dead cap if he gets cut. Anyways, I think Wentz is there to stay. I secretly, want to have it change just because it's been so frustrating. And I was the biggest pro Carson Wentz dude at the beginning of the season. Like, guys, give him a chance. Don't panic on him. He's going to be fine. And then these last 3 weeks, he's just been a stinker. Yeah, it's so frustrating.
It's been tough. For sure. For sure.
So let's get to a more fun topic. Or what do you want to talk about?
No, that wrapped it up for me, for sure.
All right. Fun topic now. Steelers wide receivers. Obviously, this was not the Juju week that he's actually had the last couple of weeks. This was the Deontay Johnson week, which Deontay Johnson's been playing balls out when he's actually on the field. And then Chase Claypool also had a decent week with 16 PPR points. So my question to you, Adam, is what do you think about this wide receiver core and what happens to like Juju and all of them in general in 2021? Because we also have the potential that they may have a new quarterback going into 2021 with Big Ben getting a little bit older.
Yeah, so I think from a lot of the stuff that I've been seeing and the way that the Steelers have kind of traded Juju, I don't think it's totally unrealistic that Juju leaves Pittsburgh next season, which probably isn't a terrible thing. Whoever is the wide receiver scout at Pittsburgh is not getting paid enough. Whoever that is, like, he is so good at his job. He's better than anything that I do. The way the Steelers find wide receivers, I was skeptical about Chase Claypool, and because of that, I don't have any Chase Claypool in Dynasty, and now it's impossible to get him. I mean, I think he set a record for like most touchdowns in the first 10 games. Like he's right up there with 10. That was what I was seeing on the broadcast today. So Steelers wide receivers, and they know what they're doing when they're scouting those guys. But I think Juju walks. It would be nice to see him land somewhere. You know, I've seen Houston as like a popular, destination possibly to get Deshaun Watson some extra pieces. I'd love that. That'd be cool. Potentially Washington as they kind of enter a rebuild as well for getting some guys. So I think there's some possibilities, but in terms of, just any of those Steelers wide receivers, Deontay, Claypool, I mean, if you can get them, they're going to be hard to get, but if you can get them, those are guys that I want in Dynasty, and they end up drafting one this year. I would recommend that somewhere you invest a rookie pick on one of those guys because they always hit.
Yeah, I think Deontay Johnson is someone you can still get not cheap, but it's doable because people are still concerned about his health. It depends on if the trade deadline's passed and all that, but one of the biggest things about this week is Deontay Johnson had 23 PPR points without a touchdown, which is pretty impressive for a wide receiver. And then Claypool had a touchdown, had 15.9, like I said. So yeah, it's I think Claypool for a lot of people is just based off of the age alone and him being a rookie is like launched above Deontay Johnson, even though I personally still want Deontay Johnson over Claypool and even Juju as well, just because we've seen it in that the last like 4 games that it's not every game that he's played, but whenever he's had 10 or more targets, he's playing really well. And it's impressive to see him have 5 games this season so far with 10 or more targets, especially with people like Juju and Claypool on the field as well.
For sure. And we don't know what's going to happen with Big Ben. Certainly we could speculate that this would be the last year, but people have been saying that for a while about Ben Roethlisberger. I think Chase Claypool really fits what Ben Roethlisberger likes to do. He likes to take deep shots. He likes to kind of throw it up there and let his guy go get it. And that's who Chase Claypool is. He's a big wide receiver. He's going to oppose as well and some smaller defenders. But if they change quarterbacks, and somebody doesn't necessarily like to do that, I think Deontay Johnson profiles as just a better overall wide receiver. He's really well at separating and creating some space for him. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but I feel like Deontay Johnson is always, top of the league in cushion and yard separation per target. Whenever he gets the ball, he's always separating himself from defenders and things like that. So he's a little bit more of that Antonio Brown type prospect, where I think it's a little bit easier to play because he can get open, and quarterbacks usually like that.
Yeah, I was just looking at also with Ben Roethlisberger's contract. I'm trying to pull it up real quick. Not the full contract. Man, I didn't know. Over the cap goes all the way back to 1983 for contracts. Goodness, guys. That's some dedication right there.
No kidding. No kidding.
But 2021, yeah, wow. Big Ben currently is going to be the top paid quarterback with $41 million in cap number. But over half of that's going to be dead cap. going his way. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see because his dead cap is still 22.25 million, but they're 10-0. Like the wins matter a lot, and if they go win a Super Bowl and Big Ben wants to come back, I don't see any reason on the Steelers passing up on him. And honestly, that make Big Ben a solid like super flex quarterback buy for contenders going into the next year, just to give yourself some more stability.
For
yeah,
sure,
that's interesting.
I think that's a good point about them potentially winning the Super Bowl too, because I've got a lot of friends that are Steelers friends, a lot of friends that are Steeler fans, and they speculate that if they win, this is going to be Big Ben's last dance, and he'll kind of peace out. Which, again, that's speculating a lot. A lot could change, but that's something to keep your eye on during the offseason. You know, Big Ben wins the Super Bowl, maybe kind of move on, or if you're worried about Chase Claypool and you can sell him at an all-time high, you know, that might not be a bad time to do so.
Yeah, I have so much respect for guys that win it all, and they're like, you know what, I'm done. Like what Manning ended up being able to do, and honestly, Brady had multiple occasions to give it a chance. Maybe he'll get another chance this year. I don't know. We'll just see.
You never know. You never know.
So now we're going to go into some Dynasty ads, and I'll go ahead and start with one of my Dynasty ads, and then you'll go next, Adam. So with mine, my first one, this is a guy I've talked about a couple of times. This is more just general potential opportunity. It's J.J. Taylor. He is currently rostered in 7% of NFL leagues, and I was actually surprised by that number because it shot up when he was getting opportunity, and I expect the opportunity to continue coming his way now with Rex Burkhead hitting IR. From what I've seen, it's more J.J. Taylor's just a healthy scratch. There is Sony Michel coming back, so that can, sort of get away some of that luster to him. But at the same time, he'll be on the team next year in 2021, and it's just he's the guy I'd want to stash, especially like if I'm a retooling team. I'd rather have someone like him than any like a Larry Fitzgerald. I'd cut Larry Fitzgerald to get a J.J. Taylor. Obviously, try to trade Fitzgerald for like a 2022 fourth-round pick or something if you can, but sort of try to get players like this that have potential upside. Again, if he doesn't do anything, you just drop him. It's just that simple.
Yeah, no, I love that, especially with that little caveat about Rex Burkhead being done. Sounds like he tore his ACL, so he's definitely going to be out for the season. And we know how the Patriots love, running backs, so he could easily kind of get some opportunity. And if he does well with it, yeah, that's somebody that you definitely want to be storing on your bench.
Yeah, we'll see. I was super excited because he had a couple good weeks to where he was like the number one running back in the attempts on their team. But then he obviously has fallen off for some. It was probably because Damian Harris came back, honestly. But Adam, I'll let you go to your couple of Dynasty ads.
Yeah, so my first one, he's a little bit of an older prospect, 28 years old right now, but that's Jakeem Grant of the Miami Dolphins. He had a better week than he did this week. He's been playing a lot more with Preston Williams out, but this is somebody that is a small guy, but he's a fast guy. He can get open and separate. He runs a 4, at least he did at the NFL Combine, ran a 4.42 40-yard dash. This is a guy that once Preston Williams went down, heavily involved. Last week, I don't have the week 11 numbers up just yet, but last week against the Chargers, ran 43 routes, had 5 targets, one in the red zone, and ultimately was able to convert that one target for a touchdown. So he's somebody that I think has been kind of hanging around in the league, and now that he's getting some opportunity, we're seeing him produce a little bit. He had a bad week this week, but I didn't watch the Dolphins game too closely. It sounds like Tua had a pretty bad game, and there wasn't a lot of passing opportunities going around. So it'll be interesting to see what happens, next week. But he's another one of those kind of Deontay Johnson type guys. Target separation, averages 2 yards a target. It's top 20 in the league. So this guy's getting open. He can do some things with the ball, and obviously I talked about that speed once he gets open.
Yeah, Grant's been a pretty good ad over the last couple of weeks, and yeah, if he's still on a waiver wire, get him immediately on your roster for that potential. And yeah, it wasn't a great week for the Dolphins. I wasn't able to watch the whole game, but yeah, it was not a great week for the Dolphins. And I know who is it? Troy King Mode and Linda on Twitter. I don't know if you follow them, Adam, but they had a little bet about Dolphins versus Broncos, and it's pretty funny to watch because I was definitely like, why are you betting against the Dolphins? They've been looking great. And then lo and behold, obviously Drew Lock somehow pulls the game and, gets a win. So yeah, we'll see Troy with a different Abby coming in next or tomorrow, I think. So that'll be a fun little thing for Twitter next or tomorrow.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. I can't wait to see
And
that.
it's gonna be so funny. They're if y'all don't go to FF Confidential, I think is what it is on Twitter. Y'all should definitely check them out. They're a fun group to watch, and Bauer and all of them are just great. So, anyways, let's get back to the podcast. You have 2 Chargers also listed, which I love the call, especially with Herbert being Herbert.
So that was the main thinking behind this one is I've been really impressed with Justin Herbert. So anyone that I can find that's attached to him in dynasty leagues, I'm trying to add. Obviously, you'd want Keenan Allen or Mike Williams. Those guys are a little bit more. They should be rostered in every single league. So the guys I'm kind of gravitating towards and scooping them up where I can is either Jalen Guyton or Joe Reed. So Jalen Guyton's been playing a lot more. He hasn't really done a whole lot with his opportunities. He had a couple of 50-yard catches and 70-yard touchdowns with Justin Herbert, but he's certainly cooled off these past couple of weeks. But he's out there, he's playing a lot, he's running a lot of routes. He's got the speed. So if you can be the deep threat target with Justin Herbert, that's something that I'm definitely interested in, especially given Guyton's age. And then the other one, he's definitely out there. I've got him pretty much stashed on any dynasty league where I have a taxi squad spot. That was a little bit difficult to get through.
It's Joe Reed.
Yeah, no kidding. Joe Reed out of Virginia. This is a guy that was just flat out athletic in college, and I think ultimately what happened here is he's having a little bit of difficulty adjusting to just the route tree and the intricacies of playing the wide receiver position at the NFL level. So we haven't seen a lot of him. He's a 5th-round pick. I think this guy's a little bit of a work in progress, but he's got the skill. He's got the speed. He's a punt returner, certainly very dynamic in college. So he's somebody that I'm stashing and potentially seeing what they could do in 2021.
Yeah, and I like getting those stashes that are more, just deep, just put on either your taxi squad or on your bench, just into bench stashes. Obviously, it depends on the size of the league, because if you're in like a FFPC league, because I talked to a guy that's doing auctions for FFPC. It was really interesting, but those are only 16 or 20 roster spots, which you're not going to usually want to have one of those guys. But I love the, 30, 35 roster spots. Or I'm actually in HQ, Dynasty HQ 3's league, and they have unlimited taxi. So if you can stash guys like this on your taxi, obviously you're probably going to have to cut a lot of them in the offseason. But if 1 or 2 of them hits, you're golden.
Yep.
So I like the call. And then my final guy is Anthony Ferkser. He's rostered in 19% of MFL leagues, so he's probably rostered in most of your leagues. And the main reason is it's just when Juju is missing a little bit of time, Ferkser just goes out and he plays well. Like this most recent week, he had 7.3 PPR points. He had 40% of the snaps, and Juju did miss some time this week, and he had 4 receptions, 33 yards. Whenever it was in week 6, he had over 50% of the snaps, and he had 23.5 PPR points. Now, I'm not saying week in, week out, he's going to be fantastic, because he did in week 8 have 42% of the snaps and only 5.6 PPR points. In week 9, it was 49% and at only 4.9 PPR points. But whenever he's on the field, he's showing that he can score some points for you. And especially in any tight end premium league, obviously you're going to have a lot more points coming your way. And I just think he's a solid stash in case something happens to Jonnu, especially with his week 13 and 14 matchup against the Browns and the Jaguars. So it's just one of those things that I just think he's just that guy you want to put into your bench just in case, especially if you're a contender. If you're more of a retool rebuild, I don't really see much of a reason to add him unless if you can trade him away for a very late pick, like even like a 2022, 2023 pick. Just to get him off your team after you added him. That's something I actually like to do. Like I made a trade earlier. It was a couple weeks ago. It was McKissick, Keelan Cole, and Logan Thomas for a 2022 third, and then it was what ended up being a 2021 second. So just a trade like that, team was garbage. Obviously, I wish I would have waited until McKissick had his 15 target game, which we gotta tell a little backstory here, Adam, and that Adam was on a mock draft show back in August, or he was actually involved in it, and I was making fun of his McKissick pick, being like, dude, what are you doing? Why are you drafting McKissick? It's Gibson season, or it's barber season or it's love season or anything like that. And look at McKissic. You need to take your little victory lap right now after this last couple weeks.
So I don't even know if I could take a victory lap. I like giving you a hard time, but because if we would have played that league out, there's no way I would have held McKissic till like week 10. I definitely would have cut that guy by now. So that's somebody that like I would have drafted and cut. But yeah, I mean, what I liked about him, I was skeptical about Antonio Gibson being able to immediately translate to, a running back. He had very few carries in college. That's been documented, but he's obviously impressed. But I just thought McKissic could kind of serve as that, third down back, PPR leagues be a decent play. But since Alex Smith has come, it's really been Alex Smith that's kind of resurged him. He likes to get McKissic involved and dump the ball off and kind of dink and dunk. But yeah, it was an interesting kind of pick and dynamic, and everything kind of comes full circle. And it was interesting to see McKissic kind of bust off here.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now, and you got McKissic in the 15th round, and then I ended up drafting Irv Smith Jr. in the 15th round. So you had a way better 15th round pick. Actually, McKissic is playing better than my picks I made in even the 10th round with Sterling Shepard. So you had a good draft right there, dude. Yeah, you got Jonnu Smith in the 11th. What the heck?
Wow. We should have played this league out. No, I guess if anyone's learning anything, they need to be listening to your off-season shows when we do these mock drafts, because there's some good snippets in there. We can give some people some good picks there.
That's true, and I plan on doing a lot more mock drafts. I think it's a fun thing to do, especially even like a quick little 10-round Dynasty mock draft. That's a quick timer. I think that's it's just fun to draft too. And I've already talked multiple times on my show about how I'm not going to join any more Dynasty leagues this offseason. I've done way too many. This is my break, and I'm just going to have fun with mocks probably. That's what I'm going to end up doing.
Yeah, we'll see what happens when the season actually comes around. Someone always – I'm the same way, man. Someone always messages you and is like, hey, we're doing one more. It's just for fun. You sure you don't want to come in? And you're like, I love drafted Dynasty leagues. All right, I'm in.
I'm going to have to hold out this year. This year has just been – I'm in like third weeks. Setting my roster, I'm like, do I really have to go through and set my waiver wire for an hour and a half and now set my rosters for an hour and a half? And whew, it's a lot.
Someone should come up with something just like streamline. Like, this is how far fantasy's come. Like, someone should just come up with a way that you can streamline and be like, all right, put so-and-so in all my rosters and like set it all at once, like clicking team to team.
So there is like my playbook through Fantasy Pros that it can help with setting the roster. I've actually used it a couple times. But the issue for me is more the Dynasty waiver wires, because Fantasy Pros is not the best at Dynasty. And so it gets really trippy because you're like, like a couple weeks ago in my deeper leagues, I wanted to add Deontay Foreman because he had a good week, you just never know. And they didn't even have him on there at all. So you have to just go in manually. And I usually do that anyway. So I think it, keeps you a little bit closer to your leagues. But yeah, sure. Fantasy Pros, if you're in too many leagues and you need help just setting your rosters and you like how they have their what is it called, consensus rankings, and you just change it around a little bit, it's a pretty easy way to do it.
I did not know that. Well, thank you for the
tip. I've done it a couple of times, and anyways, I would say check it out if you're interested. So now we're doing a new segment now for the rest of the regular season. And whoever comes on, or maybe it'll be solo, I don't know. But Adam and I right now are going to talk about 2021 off-season values of players and listing if certain players are buys, sells, or holds. And we're going to start with the dude that is just living in fantasy purgatory right now, Jameis Winston. And Adam, how do you feel about Jameis Winston in a Superflex league? He's currently 27 years old. He obviously had that fantastic fantasy football season last year. But this year, he's currently behind Taysom Hill. It's very uncertain where he's going to end up, if he ends up anywhere. So how are you feeling?
So, and this is an interesting caveat, is because this is how things can change so quickly in a dynasty league. And I think people think like a dynasty league, it's kind of slow moving. These trades have to be, methodical and thought out. Sometimes it's about flipping value when you can right away. If you were in a Superflex league on Monday and you were sending out feelers with Jameis Winston, there's a chance you would have got a deal done. But then Thursday or Friday rolls by, everyone doesn't want anything to do with him because Taysom Hill is the projected starter. Because of that, I think he's more of a hold. He'd be a hold for me. I would have sold him earlier this week just to try to get some value, but I don't think you're going to get much for him. You mentioned he's 27 years old. That's a little bit older for NFL players, but for QBs, it's not that old. We're seeing a lot of QBs play until their early to mid 30s. So I would hold Jameis Winston and kind of see. I think his value is probably an all-time low. In a super flex league, you can't really afford to drop a quarterback of that caliber. So he's more of a hold for me right now.
Yeah, I'm with you on either a hold or I'm honestly going to be sending some feelers as buying Jameis Winston. I still can see potential of him being a starter somewhere, especially with how rough the QB landscape is right now. There's just a lot of teams that are just have a ton of question marks. Like, I think Jameis Winston could go on the Bears and do way better than what we've seen out of Nick Foles and Mitch Trubisky pretty easily. And it's just, yeah,
I'm a Bears fan, so I would love that. I would take anybody at quarterback right now, man.
Yeah, and it's just, I think someone's going to see that 2019 stat line. They're going to see the interceptions. They'll be like, he was with Drew Brees for a year. Maybe that helped his thought process. He got LASIK as well, and give him another chance. I think by next year, I could see Winston being worth a late 2022 first. But with his current depressed value, I think the best thing to do is to send either like a mid to late 2021 second or maybe a 2021 third and a player that maybe people aren't loving as much to try to get him. I think some people are still going to hold on very tightly to Winston, though.
I think that's fair.
Because, like, Adam, if you have Winston, would you accept like a late 2021 second for him right now with his upside potential?
If I had Winston?
Yeah, in a super flex 12-team league.
Oh, man. So here's the thing, and I don't know how off script you want to get. If I was in a league like that, I feel like I've kind of seen what Jameis Winston is. If someone was sending me a second, I might take that potentially thinking I could get someone like a Zach Wilson out of BYU or, depending on where he goes. I know he's playing really well. Kyle Trask, where there's some really good QB prospects that are coming up. I don't think in the second round, I don't think you're obviously not going to get Justin Fields or Trevor Lawrence. I don't think – depends on where he goes. I know a lot of people like what's the North Dakota State guy? His name? I'm totally blanking on his name.
Oh, man, I'm blanking as well.
Bray? Is it what is his name?
Looking it up right now, and it is quarterback. Yeah, Trey Lance. Yeah.
Trey Lance. You should know that. Trey Lance. Yeah. Trey Lance, I think he's right now projected to go pretty high. And then the other one that's probably might go a little bit later in the real NFL draft, Mac Jones out of Alabama is having a heck of a year. So if I'm flipping Winston and potentially, thinking I could get one of those prospects, I might do it. This 2021 class for quarterbacks and wide receivers, I'm told, is very deep, top as well. But I would do that, actually.
Okay. Yeah, you just brought up a good point related to quarterbacks, too, because in Superflex leagues, those quarterbacks are going to go – even the not-so-great quarterbacks are going to go earlier than you'd expect. So you may have some excellent values in the second round. So start trading for second-round picks right now at the beginning of the offseason, because once March starts rolling around, once February starts rolling around and we know who's going to be the guys in the actual NFL draft, the picks just go up and up and up and up and up. And if you have picks, do not sell them until the rookie draft or like 1 week before, because I messed up and I sold a couple picks and definitely did not get full value for those picks. So it's super frustrating whenever you look back and you're like, dang it. So anyways, now we're going to talk about a guy that a lot of people don't think they are getting full value related to when they drafted him, Cam Akers. He's currently 22 years old. He's so-so. I mean, he hasn't really shown anything to be fantastic or anything. I'll go ahead and start, and I'll say that I still view him as more of a hold or a buy, and that's just more thinking about his potential opportunity on the Raiders as well. Or goodness, not the Raiders, the Rams, man. The Rams, and just sort of thinking that he can become that guy. Like even just last week, he had the most attempts on the team, which it wasn't the most efficient attempts, but he had the most attempts. So I still believe, and I think you can get him for like a mid to late 2021 second. I'd be interested. But again, a lot of people are holding on to these players because of their perceived values. So it's a little bit tougher to get someone like a Cam Akers. What do you think, Adam?
Yeah, he's a big buy for me. So I tend, and it's difficult because recency bias is a real thing in fantasy football. And I'm fairly new to Dynasty. I've been playing it not as long as some people, but I tend to pick it up pretty quick and kind of figure out what the trends are and values. And whatever we thought of these guys pre rookie draft, I still think we should hold the same value. So Cam Akers in a super flex league was the top 6 pick. In non-super flex leagues, he was a top 3 or 4 pick. I still think you should value him there. We talked about Drew Brees with the rib injury. Cam Akers had a couple of rib injuries earlier this season that I think really derailed his rookie season. I don't know his extensive injury history, but if we're talking about a young guy as he's getting in the NFL and he's never really struggled with injuries or had any problems with that, and he gets a major injury for the first time, I think that could be adjustment period. We had a truncated offseason where these guys weren't able to get any preseason games or any offseason training camp and things like that. So you throw an injury on top of that, and that kind of just derailed, I think, his whole rookie season. I think he could still break out late, so I'd still be trying to get him if your league still has trades. I'd still be trying to get him up an all-time low, but he's definitely somebody that I'd be buying. The skill levels there. He's in the Sean McVay offense. It's just been a couple of things that are out of his control in terms of injuries and what we're dealing with COVID-19.
Yeah, I agree. So we're going to go now to an older wide receiver, Julio Jones. He's going to be 32 years old at the start of the season. Everybody is going to keep looking at him. And I just think if you have Julio Jones on your team, hopefully you're still a contender because he's a hold for me. And if you're a contender and you want to get that vet on a discount and you still believe that he's going to, maintain his form, which this year it's been more off and on, I think Julio Jones can be a buy. And again, you need to really look closely at your teams. And if you're like, I don't think 2021 is going to be my year, and I'd rather go for a 2022 or just get those youth, which this year we've seen some wide receiver explosion with youth. So I honestly, I could see Julio Jones, depending on your team, being all of the above. It just depends on what you're looking at. I think he probably leans closer to a buy in the offseason because that the vets just become worth nothing compared to their production.
Yeah, no, I think you bring up an interesting point. It definitely depends on where you're at and what your team's looking at. I'm actually going to go a different way. I think he's a little bit more of a sell for me for some of the reasons that you talked about. And for whatever reason, he got injured and he came back first. He's starting to get these hamstring injuries. They're popping up and lingering and kind of coming on and off. And I don't think that's a coincidence. I think as you get older, it's a little bit harder to come back from some of those soft tissue injuries. And if you're starting to accumulate them a little bit, there's a reason these guys taper off at the end of their career. They don't just lose their juice. It's sometimes a combination of some injuries that kind of start to accumulate and really derail their playing time and their ability to produce. So he's somebody, I'm not just selling to sell. He's still Julio Jones. He's still going to put up some big weeks. But if you can, get a first round pick for him, this 2021 class, it talks a lot about the quarterbacks, but, I could go on about some of the wide receivers. And one of my favorite ones is a guy that goes to the school that I'm an alumni at, and Rondale Moore. I'm a big Rondale Moore fan. So if I could kind of envision where I would be getting that first round pick from, and it's somebody I could get like Rondale Moore, Jamar Chase, I'd be willing to make that move.
Yeah, I'm with you. If you can get any 2021 first for Julio, I would go to make that move because even you could even get a higher caliber player with that first once rookie pick time runs around. So yeah, that's a great point with Julio Jones. It'll be very interesting to see what his value is because I bet most people are gonna not want to add him unless it's like a mid 2021 second or something. They'll trade that for him, which to me it depends on how the class ends up because I know every time in February, at least this last year, was like this huge thing of, oh man, this class is gonna be so deep. We're gonna get Etienne, we're gonna get Hubbard, and then they went back to school, and you're like, well, okay, it's still deep, but it's not like mid-second round is top tier deep, which I think we'll have more of the same in that, the top 8 to 12 guys are gonna be like really solid, which I don't know, man. That second round, how we've been seeing it go with Herbert, and Superflex go in the second round. The second round was stacked in fantasy points so far. So yeah, it's going to be tough. I think you bring up a great point with the hamstrings, because if it keeps lingering around and it comes back, that's not good for anybody.
So yeah, and I don't want to overwhelm your audience too much, but just so people have, like, these are guys, even like you talked about with some second round picks. These are guys, some of them are juniors, so they could go back to schools, but right now are either fringy first or second round picks. You got Devonta Smith out of Alabama. That'd be a great guy to add in Dynasty. Tamion Terry out of Florida State. He's been battling with some injuries, but he's a great player. Amon-Ra St. Brown out of USC. People, the St. Brown name with Economius, he hasn't busted out, but Amon-Ra is definitely profiles to be the best St. Brown brother. He's somebody that'd be interesting. Seth Williams out of Auburn. Terrence Wallace out of LSU was balling out with Jamar Chase sitting out, and Tylan Wallace. I think I said Taryn. It's Taryn Marshall out of LSU and Tylan Wallace from Oklahoma State. All those guys are people that you should really be thinking out. Those are going to be studs, and that's just at the wide receiver position. I mean, this class for wide receivers is going to be super deep. So if you're looking to kind of upgrade, Julio's moving closer to that AJ Green value for me in Dynasty, where I think it's going to be close where he's about to fall off a cliff here.
Yeah, and if anybody heard those names and they're like, who? Snake of the Draft is going to be very focused on the coming up rookies, and also probably talking to more Devy people and just how to look at players going into the rookie drafts in more January, February, because that's something I personally need to work on. I'm not great with knowing the players as they come up and all that. I've never been super big into college, but I'm going to be working on it. We're going to be working on it together, everybody. And Adam, let's bring you on and start talking about some rookie picks. We'll both learn together. It'll be a blast.
For sure, man. And I honestly haven't watched all those guys play, but I've been making notes. Those are names that are coming up, and if the list is that deep, those are just people to write down right now. Keep that in the back of your mind. If the list is that long, the caliber of talent is there, and we can figure out who goes where and whatnot. But that's just to give people an idea. Like, there's a lot of names that are going to be good players here.
Yeah, I agree. So this next guy is actually a guy that you wrote a really good article about this offseason, Evan Ingram. He's 27 years old. So one thing in the article you wrote about is with the Lisfranc injury, which is what he had, you typically have like a 21% drop in production, which so far this season, which I think is more than just the injury. I think the Giants itself hasn't looked great. He's had a 40% drop in production. But again, Ingram has also been fully healthy so far. And according to your article, he had about a 30% chance to play all 16 games. Obviously, we aren't there yet. He's only played 10.
Yeah.
But what are you thinking about Evan Ingram? The more I look at this, the more excited I get about that potential of him having more of a bounce back year the next year, while everybody's sort of disappointed in his current production.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think, take clock is a real thing, and I was down on Evan Ingram, and you made a great point. It's hard to attribute or quantify which is which. Is it, him coming back from that injury, or is it the Giants not using him correctly or being bad? Regardless of, he's not producing this year, and I can't quantify it, but I'm willing to bet that the injury coming back from that has at least something to do with it. Whether it was, it wasn't participating with Daniel Jones this offseason because he was rehabbing, or they're limiting his snaps or limiting some of the route tree that they're giving him. Something's there. So as much as I was down on him, I'm willing to kind of admit that I've been proven wrong in some regards, and he's been playing well. And I think if you can get him at a decent price, he'd be somebody that I'm not totally avoiding. I'm not just getting rid of Evan Ingram or not listing any trades for him. There's a possibility his value is never going to be as low as it is right now. So why not try to buy in on that guy when you can?
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm trying to look right now at I'm in a mock draft. It's like a midseason mock draft, and seeing where Evan Ingram's at right now. And he was drafted at the tight end 7, which is very interesting. Because I would expect, to have Goddard and Jonnu Smith above Evan Ingram in a normal draft, which would put Evan Ingram around tight end 9. And I think even I'm not on the Zach Ertz hype train right now. Zach Ertz is pretty dead to me in Dynasty. Even Irv Smith Jr., I would currently draft above Evan Ingram. He's actually the guy I was wanting to talk about, but then I'm like, we can't have all these young guys. We have to actually have good discussions about players. So So yeah, I think Evan Ingram, like you said, can be a guy that you can get at a relative discount, especially we have a couple people that are in start 2 tight end leagues. He's someone that you could go after in the offseason. People are going to see, his point per game and just have a sour taste and be like, he's just that guy that just like doesn't do anything. And you can sort of think about it a little bit more in that. Maybe it's related to the injury. Hopefully, if Daniel Jones is QB next year, that sort of figures itself out. Maybe once Saquon comes back, that helps the offense as a whole. But yeah, I'm still an Evan Ingram fan. And also at 27 years old, which is what he'll be at the start of 2021, is sort of that age where the tight end starts to really start producing. So I'm not saying it's exactly going to happen, but I'm hopeful.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I think 7 is a little bit high for me. I think he's more of a fringy top 10 tight end.
Yep.
I don't hate it. I mean, I understand it. It's, you're drafting him based on past production and the athleticism that he's obviously displayed in the past. I probably have him closer to 10. But if I could get value around there, yeah, I'd be interested.
Yeah, I'm trying to see real quick where I have him ranked right now, which I'm just going to assume it's like tied in 11 or 12 for my own rankings, because Hunter Henry is a very interesting guy as well for tight ends because he is at the end of his contract right now. So there's a lot up in the air with him. And then Austin Hooper has just not done anything at all. So,
yeah. And it'll be interesting this offseason too. Again, I know you didn't anticipate this being a Debbie show, but I'm going to talk about another guy in 2021. I think Kyle Pitts, depending on, there's people talking about he might be a top 10 pick in the real NFL draft. So if he does that, I think he instantly becomes the top 10 dynasty tight end, just because we don't see those guys get that kind of draft capital. And he's obviously been balling out this year. So he's somebody that I think can maybe bump Evan Ingram back a little bit in dynasty, but just another name to consider.
Kyle Pitts is a baller, and I have Evan Ingram at tight end 11. And honestly, I'm just thinking about the current tight end landscape, and I could see Kyle Pitts immediately jumping to tight end 5, right behind Kelsey, Kittle, Hawk, and Waller, just because a lot of people aren't feeling so great about Fant and Jono Smith and Mark Andrews. So I could see a lot of people getting bold and even putting him at tight end 3 or tight end 2 and dropping Kelsey to tight end 3 or 4. So yeah, Pitts is going to be interesting because he's going to be all over the place. He's going to be high. But some people are going to have him crazy high and then most likely get pissed off when he doesn't produce in his first year, because that's typical tight ends. That's what they do. They just typically don't produce.
Yeah, I mean, and we could go through, on speculate landing spot and talk about, all that stuff. But, I mean, could you imagine – I'm not saying it'll happen. I'm not saying they have other needs. But could you imagine how Pitts, like if Dallas Pitts, and then he gets in with Lamb and Dak Prescott back healthy and their air raid system. I mean, it would be hard to pass up on that guy.
It's any type of situation like that just gets it just gets exciting, honestly, which that's why like people were upset, including myself, about CeeDee Lamb to the Cowboys last year. Just because you want them to go to that most exciting situation where they get the most opportunities.
Yeah.
So awesome. I had a blast tonight, Adam. Do you have any like projects or anything you're working on right now?
For sure. So this week I just unveiled, working with the guys at the Undroppables, the injury tracker on their website. So you can go to the site at theundroppables.com. At the top there's injury tracker, or you can go to theundroppables.com/resources/injury tracker. I'm basically every week for redraft leagues going through injury reports. I'm putting the latest practice reports up in there, talking about player injuries, giving you my personal notes, what I'm thinking is going on, what I'm speculating for possible return times. I think it's a really easy tool, just so, you talked about having multiple teams. It's tough enough tracking, is this guy in or is this guy out? It's one resource, tells you, did they practice this week, what I'm thinking, all one-stop shop, easy cheat sheet for you. So it's something that I'm proud of, and I'm going to constantly be updating daily. So I would definitely check it out if you're following if you have players that are injured and following their injury reports.
I'm definitely going to have to check that out. I have to search Twitter way too often to try to figure out what's happening with all these players. Like Matt Breida today, I was like, is he playing? Is he not? Just more related to Ahmed and if he was going to be the main guy there. But yeah, that's great. I'll put that in the show notes, and also I'm going to be looking at that a lot more often.
Yeah, that was kind of my thinking behind it. Is it was just I think becoming more and more difficult for people to find stuff. It's certainly not an exhaustive list of all the injuries. I mean, it's more fantasy relevant players, but it's something that people can go to get help.
Awesome. So thank you again for coming on, Adam. Everyone go follow Adam on Twitter at @TheRealAdam_H. Also, I have a special announcement for all of you Snake in the Draft listeners. I have created the Snake in the Draft Patreon page to help get to know everybody better, as well as to create more content for Patreon subscribers. I'll be releasing at least one Patreon exclusive podcast a week and at least one Patreon article a month. So if you're interested in supporting me on Patreon, check out my pinned tweet or click on the link in the show notes. With this, I'll be making an announcement on Monday, which will be tomorrow. And so, yeah, I appreciate any support on the Patreon, as well as thank you for your support on the podcast. Make sure to subscribe, rate, and review to the Snake in the Draft podcast or listen to podcasts. I want to thank you all for tuning in. Let's be snakes this season. Oh, that was a mouthful at the end.
Man, that's awesome. I didn't know